There is a narrow crack in the desert mountains, deep in the south of what we now call Jordan, Slot Canyon, so tight in places that you could reach out and touch both walls at once, and winding for the better part of a mile between cliffs that rise 200 feet on either side, all but a thin ribbon of sky. Most of its length, there is nothing to see but rock, red rock and rose rock, and rock the color of old honey, folded and swirled by time into shapes like frozen smoke. The path turns and turns again. Your footsteps are the only sound. And then, at the very end, where the canyon walls draw closest of all, the darkness ahead splits open, and framed in that narrow gap, glowing pale gold in the desert light, stands the carved front of a temple, more than 100 feet high, directly into the living cliff. This is Petra, and tonight we are going to walk through it slowly and hear its whole long story. First desert traders who raised it, to the centuries it lay all but forgotten, known only to the wandering tribes who kept its secret. There is no hurry. Let the desert quiet settle over you, and let it carry you down into sleep. A rose, red city, half as old as time, and though he had never seen it, when he wrote those words, he was not far wrong. Petra is not a city of buildings, as we would think of a city. It is a city carved out of the mountains themselves. Its great monuments were not built up stone upon stone, but cut down and inward, hollowed and shaped straight from the solid rock of the cliffs. Staircases, whole facades taller than houses, all of them carved, patiently, by hand, into the face of the stone. Stone itself is extraordinary, banded in every warm color the earth can offer, rose and coral and amber, streaked with veins of purple and gray, swirling together like watercolors left to run. In the low light of morning and evening, the whole valley seems to glow from within, as though the rock had soaked up centuries of sun and were giving it slowly back. It sits hidden in a bowl among the mountains, ringed by cliffs, through that single narrow canyon. A secret place, a place you could pass within a mile of, and never know was there. For a long stretch of history, that is exactly what happened. But we are getting ahead of the story. Understand the city, we must first understand the people who made it. And to understand them, we must begin, as they did, out in the open desert. Let that thought carry you, gently, out under the wide desert stars. The Nabataeans, and in the beginning, they had no city at all. Desert people, wanderers, herders of camels and sheep, moving with the seasons across the harsh dry lands between Arabia and the Mediterranean. They left almost no writing about themselves in those early days, and so much of what they were is a mystery to us still. But we know they were tough and clever, and above all, that they understood the desert as few peoples ever have. The desert, to most, is a barrier, a thing to be crossed, quickly and fearfully, or not at all. To the Nabataeans, it was home. They knew where the hidden water lay. They knew the safe paths and the killing ones. They knew how to vanish into the empty country when danger came, how to survive where others would simply die of thirst. Over generations, they turned that knowledge into something more valuable than any farmland or any mine. They turned it into a trade. Across those same deserts, ran the great caravan roads of the ancient world. Whoever could guide the caravans and guard them and water them along the way, ever held the desert, held the trade, and the trade in those days was worth more than gold. Picture them now, a line of dark figures and laden camels, moving slowly across a moonlit waste, certain of their way, and let your own mind slow to the pace of that patient desert march. Above all was incense. It is hard for us today to understand how precious incense once was. In the ancient world, frankincense and myrrh, the fragrant dried resins of certain desert trees, were worth their weight in silver and sometimes more. Every temple in every land burned them by the ton. Every offering, every act of worship from Egypt to Rome sent up its curl of sweet smoke. The demand was endless, and the supply grew only in the far south of Arabia, a world away. The incense had to travel. It came north out of Arabia on the backs of camels, in caravans that might number in the hundreds, crossing more than 1,000 miles of the harshest country on earth. Of that journey, the Nabataeans controlled. They guided the caravans. They protected them from raiders. They sold them water at the wells and rest at the way stations, and safe passage through the desert they alone could master. And at every stop, a share of the precious cargo stayed in their hands. Frankincense and myrrh, spices from the east, that had come hand to hand all the way from China, and ivory and gold flowed north along the incense road, and Petra sat astride the road like a great stone gate, and grew rich beyond imagining on everything that passed. There is a deep calm in the thought of it, the slow rivers of trade, moving across the centuries, patient as the seasons. Let it move through you now, unhurried, and let your breathing fall into its slow and steady rhythm. Does not build a city in a place like this. For Petra sits in a desert that sees, in some years, barely a hand's width of rain, and a city needs water, far more water than a desert freely gives. This was the Nabataeans' greatest genius, not their carving, remarkable as it was. Water. They understood, as almost no one else in the ancient world did, that in the desert, water is not something you find, it is something you catch. And they built across the whole valley and the hills around it an invisible masterwork to catch it. The rare rains came, sudden, violent, gone in an hour. The water would come roaring down the dry gullies in a killing flood. The Nabataeans learned to tame that flood, cut channels into the cliffs, gentle grooves that ran for miles, guiding the water down at a careful, patient slope, great cisterns hidden in the rock to hold it. They shaped dams and pipes and settling basins until not a precious drop of that brief, wild rain was wasted. It was gathered and stored and made to last the long, dry year. They took the one thing the desert gave rarely and grudgingly, and they held on to it patiently, and it made everything else possible. The gardens, the tens of thousands of people who came to live in a valley of bare rock, resting quietly on their mastery of the falling rain. There is something restful in that too, the patient gathering of small things held safe against the dry seasons. Let that patience settle over you now. Let us walk, at last, into the city itself, and to reach it, we must pass through the sick, That is the name of the Great Canyon, the Sikyu, the shaft. It is the only easy way in, and it is a mile of pure wonder. Imagine walking it at dusk, when the crowds are gone and the light is going soft and gold. Close in around you, high and sheer, leaning together overhead until the sky is only a thread of deepening blue. The air grows cool and still. Rock glows in bands of rose and rust and violet, and where the water channels run along the walls, cut by the old engineers, there is the faint sound of trickling somewhere in the shadows. It wins and narrows and wins again. You cannot see far ahead. The next turn, and the next, and the deepening quiet, and the sense. Every step of passing out of the ordinary world and into somewhere set apart, and old, and waiting. The Nabataeans meant it to feel this way. This was the approach to their sacred city, and they shaped the journey like a slow drawing of breath, a long, dark passage that made what waited at the end feel like a revelation. Slowly now, in your mind, turn by turn, there is nothing to fear in the gathering dark, the cool stone, and the quiet, and the promise of what lies ahead. And then at the last turn, it appears. Narrow gap in the canyon walls, glowing in the last of the light, rises the most famous face in all of Petra, the great carved front that the local people came to call the Kazna, the Treasury. It is more than 130 feet tall, cut whole and entire from the sheer cliff, and even now, after 2,000 years, it stops the breath in your chest. Columns, figures standing in their niches, a great urn at the very top, weathered by the ages, of it cut inward, patiently, from the top down, by carvers hanging from the raw rock face, with nothing beneath them but the drop. There was no building it up, and no starting again. You need to do, every stroke of the chisel had to be right the first time, and it is. And no one is entirely certain what it was for. For a great king, most likely a royal resting place, made to overawe. Ages who had forgotten its makers. Stories that a pharaoh's treasure was hidden in the stone urn at its summit need to do. And that is how it got its name. There is no treasure, but the stories cling to it still, the way stories cling to any beautiful, understood thing left behind by the deep past. Before it a while in the blue dusk, and let it fill your quiet mind by hands whose names are utterly lost, stands glowing in the silence of the canyon. The treasury, the canyon opens out, and the whole hidden valley of Petra spreads before you. And everywhere you look, the cliffs are carved. There are hundreds of them, hundreds upon hundreds of facades cut into the rose-colored rock around the bowl of the valley and up into the hills beyond. Plain, a simple doorway and a chamber, vast, with columns and steps and rows of carved crenellations along the top, like the fronts of great palaces. Most of them are tombs, for the Nabataeans honored their dead by carving them houses in the eternal rock, into the cliffs, where the bones of families were laid to rest. Generation after generation, looking out over the city they had built, to be given such a tomb was to be remembered, to have your name and your family's name cut into the living mountain, where it might last as long as the stone itself. And in the soft evening light, with the swallows wheeling and calling around the high carved fronts. It is not a mournful place at all. It is peaceful. Whole valley given over to quiet remembrance. The living below, going about their evening. The dead above, resting in the warm rock, watching over them, patient and unhurried, turning of the years. Let that peace be with you now. There is nothing to fear in the resting dead of Petra. The warm stone and the wheeling swallows and the long, long quiet. But we must not think of Petra as only a place of tombs. Great days. It was a living city, and a crowded one. Down on the valley floor, where the two dry river beds met, ran a broad paved street lined with columns, the heart of the town. Markets here, loud with the tongues of a dozen lands, Arab and Greek, Egyptian and Roman, and Syrian, all come to trade. Temples great free, standing ones of dressed stone, where the incense the city grew rich on rose in sweet clouds to the gods, fed by that patient hidden water, splashing in a valley that should by rights have been bone dry. Gardens, real gardens, green and shaded, an astonishment in that red waste. Archaeologists now believe a great garden pool, a broad basin of water with a pavilion set on an island in its center, where the wealthy of Petra could sit in the cool of the evening and forget, for a while, the vast desert waiting just beyond the cliffs. Perhaps 30,000 people lived here at the height. Fine painted pottery, thin as an eggshell, the finest of the ancient world. They wrote in a flowing script of their own. They worshipped their own gods in their own quiet way. Around them stood the glowing carved cliffs, and above them the desert stars, and nothing you need to do. And beyond the ring of mountains, the long roads running out to the ends of the known world. Imagine an evening there, long ago, the heat of the day fading, and the lamps being lit along the colonnaded street, caravans coming in through the sikh, the deep rose light dying slowly on the high stone tombs. Rest there a while. There is nowhere you need to be. And the Nabataeans were a devout people in their quiet way, and their gods lived not in painted statues but in the stone itself. Their greatest god they called Dushara, a god of the mountains, whom they worshipped not as a carved figure, but as a simple block of rough stone, a piece of the sacred rock itself. There is something in that which feels very old and very true to the desert, the divine not as a face, but as the bones of the earth, the mountains under the stars. Above the city, up a long stair carved into the cliffs, hundreds of steps, climbing and turning up the sheer red rock, lies one of their most sacred places. They called it the high place of sacrifice. It is a wide flat court, cut level into the very summit of a mountain, basins and channels, and an altar open to the sky. In your mind, slowly, one worn step at a time, the city falls away below you. The desert opens out on every side, ridge behind ridge of bare mountains, fading blue into the distance. The wind is clean and cool, and there is nothing between you and the whole enormous sky. It is easy up there to feel what they must have felt, the smallness of a single life, and the great patient age of the stone, and a kind of peace that has nothing to do with words. Breathe it in, the high desert wind. Carry your last cares away over the ridges into the dark and gone. Golden lasts forever, and Petra's great age, in time, drew to its close. But it did not end in fire or slaughter. It ended slowly, quietly, the way a tide goes out. First came Rome, ever hungry, reached at last as far as the desert kingdom, simply absorbed it, peacefully enough, into its vast machine. Under Rome, the city flourished still. New buildings rose. The colonnaded street was paved anew, but something had changed. The Nabataeans were no longer masters of their own desert. It's now one among many. And then the trade itself began to fail them. The great secret of their wealth had always been the caravan roads, and slowly, over the centuries, moved. New sea routes opened up, carrying the incense and the spices by ship instead of by camel, passing the desert altogether. The rivers of trade that had made Petra rich began, quietly, to run elsewhere. The earth, too, turned against the city. A series of great earthquakes shook the valley over the years, toppling the free, standing temples, cracking the careful waterworks, breaking the channels that had made a garden of the desert. And each time, a little less was rebuilt, a little more was let go. No single ending, slow fading, generation by generation to easier places. The markets grew quiet, the fountains ran dry, the gardens withered back into sand, carved cliffs, the tombs, and the Treasury looked down now on emptier and emptier streets. It is a gentle kind of sadness, the fading of Petra, not a tragedy, the natural turning of things, the way all bright and busy things grow quiet at last. That quiet turning soothe you now as the city empties and the desert begins patiently to take it back. Petra fell asleep. The last of the great families departed. The last lamps went dark along the colonnaded street, and the desert, which is endlessly patient, began to reclaim its own. Sand blew in and drifted deep across the paving stones. Flash floods, no longer tamed by the broken channels, roared down the sick-queue and buried the valley floor. The green things died. It grew complete. 1,000 years and more, the great city sat empty in its ring of mountains. Its glowing tombs staring out over nothing but sand and shadow. World beyond the desert. It was simply gone. Its very name faded from the maps and the memories of the West, until learned men in distant countries were no longer sure it had ever truly existed at all. A legend arose, Red City, that might be only a story. But it was never truly lost. Out in the desert, the wandering tribes remained, the Bedouin, the descendants of the same people who had always known this country, and they knew exactly where Petra was, made their homes in the old carved tombs, sheltering in the cool rock chambers, fires beneath the 2,000-year-old carvings. They kept the secret of the hidden city passed quietly down the generations, and they saw no reason to share it with the strangers from beyond the sands. And so it waited, empty of its makers, but not unknown, sleeping in the desert, in the keeping of the people who had never left, without impatience through the long-forgotten centuries, for the world to remember it again. Is a deep peace in that image, the great glowing city, at rest in the silence, wanting nothing, waiting for nothing, simply enduring in the warm stone under the wheeling stars, rests there with it, now. At last, the world came back. It was in the year 1812, from Switzerland, learned and daring, was making his way through these deserts in disguise, dressed as an Arab pilgrim, speaking the language, careful never to reveal that he was a stranger from the far-off west. He had heard whispers among the local people of magnificent ruins hidden in the mountains. Bedouin knew, and outsiders did not. He could not simply ask to see them. A Westerner poking about such a place would have been robbed. Worse, his guide, a careful story that he had made a vow to sacrifice a goat at the tomb of Aaron, the brother of Moses, which lay, it was said, in those very mountains. Suspecting nothing, led him down into the desert and into a narrow winding canyon. As he walked that darkening sick, keeping his face calm, betraying nothing you need to do, while all around him the carved walls began to appear, and then the last turn, and the great glowing front of the Treasury rising before him out of the cliff, and he, the first man from the outside world in 1,000 years to look upon it, forced to glance at it only sidelong, to murmur and move on, lest his guide grow suspicious. He saw enough. He carried the memory of it home, across the sea, and the news of it broke over Europe like a wave. The lost city was found. City was real. You need to do it. And in the years that followed, the world came back at last to Petra, to marvel, as we still marvel, at what those desert traders had carved so patiently from the living stone so very long ago. Nothing you need to do. But now the day is ending here in the valley of the carved cliffs, and it is time to let it go. The last of the sun is leaving the high tombs. Red rock deepens to purple, and then to a soft and shadowed gray. The swallows have gone to their roosts in the carved niches and fallen silent. On the valley floor, the old colonnaded street lies empty and still, as it has lain for centuries. And above the black rim of the mountains, one by one, the desert stars are coming out. The same stars the Nabataeans watched, and the Bedouin after them, wheeling slowly over the sleeping stone. There is nothing moving now in all the great valley, nothing but the cooling air drifting down the empty CQ, and the faint last warmth breathing out of the rock, the way the old stones hold the day's heat gently through the desert night. Go, now. The carved cliffs fade into the dark, the treasury dim, and the long stair, and the high place under the stars. You do not need to hold onto any of it. You do not need to remember a single word. Let your breath grow slow and deep and even, like the breathing of the desert itself as it cools beneath the night. Let your body grow heavy and warm, the way the rose red rock stays warm long after the sun is gone. There is nowhere to be. There is nothing to do. There is only the ancient quiet of the hidden city and the wide desert stars and the long slow turning of the night over the sleeping stone. And when you wish to wander somewhere quiet and old and far away again, be another evening waiting for you here in the quiet. Good.